Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. Dwight Kay was elected to the Illinois House of Representatives, District 112, at the November 2010 election. Declaring success during his term in office, Mr. Kay announced he will seek a second term at the November 2012 election. He said there is unfinished business which will take more than one term to accomplish. Lowering taxes, increasing job growth are top priorities. He supports a repeal of the 67% state income tax hike. Workers' compensation reform and legal reform of the civil courts are very important. He's here today to discuss issues, plus municipal electric aggregation, a very interesting area we're going to talk about, and local video gambling. Those two issues will appear on some local ballots in November. Dwight Kay, welcome to Conversation.
Thank you, Lee. It's good to be back.
Let's jump right into these local issues because I want people to hear, if they haven't, or which they probably have because of their local newspapers. And by the way, before I go any further, I want to compliment the local papers in Madison and St. Clair counties and the other Illinois counties. They seem to do so much better job of telling people in local areas what's going on in their communities than I see the Post-Dispatch doing over in the St. Louis metro area and also in the St. Louis Metro East area.
I would agree with you. People that I talk to on a regular basis are asking for more coverage of local candidates and national candidates, more information about them, the issues they support or don't support. So I'm very complimentary of these folks likewise.
Yes. So now there are these two issues, and the one is called Municipal Electric Aggregation, which is a fancy way of saying that that your local government is planning to go to some electric outfit and buy in large quantities electricity, and hopefully there's going to be some savings there, and unless you opt out, you as the homeowner or you as the small businessman, you're going to be in their contract, and they're asking people yay or nay should they be allowed to do that. Okay, Mr. State Rep, talk about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to. It's certainly not one of my areas of great expertise, but I do understand the issue.
Well, you're also an electric consumer too.
Well, I am. That's exactly right, as the company that I run. It's an important issue. Aggregation of electricity really got its start back in, well, there was conversation in 2005. By 2007, it got up to speed and really started running through the General Assembly with respect to legislation. Aggregation, as you probably know, is important because it allows in one pathway or another the consumer to buy energy at a cheaper rate. And here's how it works as I understand it. There are two ways that aggregation can occur. The first is by a local government entity taking action, a board voting to allow aggregation to take place. That typically is an opt-out scenario, which means you're in it unless you opt out of it, should this county entity vote to affirm this type of moving forward with energy consumption on a bulk basis. The other way to do it is a little bit different, and we do have this locally here, and that's by referendum. And I think there are some cities and towns in 112th District which have
Collinsville.
I think Collinsville and I believe
voting.
Glen Carbon likewise will have that on the ballot this fall. And that allows the voters to say, yes, we want it, or no, we don't. And if it passes, then in that particular case, you have to opt into it. And there's a fine difference between the opting out and the opting in, but opting in is really a little more selective in that it allows customers, whether it be commercial or residential, to stay with Ameren in this area if they so desire. So they're just not automatically voted in and stuck.
So the opt-out, that's sort of like a group policy. in health insurance, right?
Pretty much.
Everybody who's in that municipality is suddenly part of that group policy.
That's correct.
Unless they say, no, I don't want to be part of that group policy.
That is correct.
The other one, where they opt in, I want to be part of the group policy, but I'm normally going to be not part of it unless I say I want to be.
That is correct.
Right. So that's interesting. We could have a long discussion. I mean, I did shows years ago about electric reform that had something to do with, and maybe some of the viewers right now would remember, the absolute crisis of electricity that occurred out in California back in the 1990s, which eventually led to the ouster of the state's governor, Gray Davis.
That's correct.
And then I recall that Illinois decided to rewrite its electric laws at that time. And just at the time when they finished, then the whole industry changed.
That's true too.
And so they they never did go forward until recently, when you had this amendment to that law, which now people are voting on or not voting on.
Well, there's one little feature that should be mentioned here, and that is that this year in the General Assembly, I believe it was Representative Osmond, had a bill crafted which allows now not just municipalities but also townships to go to this aggregate base, if you will, to purchase electricity. And I think there's something to be said for that. If you have in a particular township, you have a number of small businesses, or you have a large and a number of small businesses who can purchase electricity at a more cost-efficient basis, I would say that's a nice plan.
I'm going to believe it when I see it, because I just can't imagine that one electric generator could generate electricity at a significantly different price than another electric generator. And but it is to be determined. We'll look at that later on, several years from now, when the evidence is all in, to find out how much. I mean, okay, so instead of it costing me $100, now it's $99.
I think the projection was that there would be somewhere in the neighborhood of a 15% savings. That's pretty significant.
That's significant, right? If it's $100 and now it's $85,
I'm a little bit like you. I want to see that before I believe it. But there is, I think, people are asking about where you can get additional information. I think there's a website called pluginillinois.org. So that would be something that people would like to go out and look at. Get probably some more specific information about the options.
Right, and if you just also, if you just go to Google and put in Municipal Electric Aggregation Illinois or Southern Illinois, that brings up a whole list of but you have to look.
You have to look.
You have to spend time looking.
Right.
Say that one that you just said again.
The site that I'm familiar with is pluginillinois.org.
Okay. Now, then we have this other little issue having to do with video gambling. Is that? I don't even know how it's titled. I couldn't even find the title of these things.
It's video gaming or gambling. Either one is pretty generally used.
And what is video gaming or gambling look like if it comes to town?
Well, I think the if it comes to town probably is something we need to discuss first. We have allowed by statute this thing called, and I'm going to use the word gaming today, video gaming, and we thought in Illinois that it was going to be a real boom to the bottom line for the state in terms of revenue. Mm-hmm. The real problem here is it's not going to be. The projected 300 to 750 million that we were supposed to be taking in from this, well, there hasn't been one dime taken in yet, because what we found was the state didn't have enough investigatory backup support, if you will, to get the job done, to find out how many people indeed would be able to have or plug in a gaming machine. But interesting feature, Chicago, the largest metropolitan city in the Midwest, prohibits video gaming. And our state legislature didn't know it. They've taken no steps to change it. So what does that mean? Okay. Well, it means that 2/5 of the, if you will, eligible jurisdictions, municipalities, establishments, if you will have to support this estimated, and I think it's a fat number, this estimated $750 million in revenue. Now, why do I say that? Well, here's the breakdown. There are 544 municipalities that don't have the capability to do a plug-in hookup.
Because they've created a law that says no, right?
Well, no, that's not right.
No?
It simply is this simple. They don't have a restaurant, or they don't have a gas station in their premises, or they don't have a truck stop, or something along that line that would allow.
Because that's the only place these things can be.
That's correct. Okay, so we've eliminated 544 locations. There's another 532 locations that have said, you know what, we don't want it. We just simply don't want it in our communities, wherever it might be. So they've outlawed it. Now there's 34 municipalities or locations which have been undecided. So that leaves you 352 or 3 qualified municipalities or locations within these municipalities where you might plug in a gaming machine or machines and start making some money for the state of Illinois.
So these are 300 and how many?
352 or 53
municipalities in the whole state of Missouri, or of Illinois.
Of Illinois. So we have a problem here. I mean, there's where my 2/5 number comes in.
Right.
If 2/5 of the eligible communities or entities say we want to plug in and hook up, just by simple math, you can figure out that you're not going to make 300 to 750 million. In fact, it's going to be a number considerably less. So it's a flawed plan from the start, and I think what we're really saying in the state of Illinois is enough's enough. People of Illinois aren't going to tolerate video gambling. They don't think it's healthy. In fact, there was a poll taken by the Chicago Crime Commission. 56% of the general public in the state of Illinois said we don't want it for various reasons. It was a straight up, it wasn't a push poll, straight up and down, do you want video gaming in the state of Illinois? The answer was no. Various reasons, but the answer was no.
Who had the idea that gambling was an excellent way to fund government services?
Well, the General Assembly has some folks who believe that gaming is a way to end the financial crisis in the state. And certainly that's not true. I think the numbers and the illustrations I've just given to you kind of set that up as a realistic proposition that we don't want it and it won't pay the bills. But we have a number of legislators, and I can think of one or two, who have taken a lot of money from the gaming industry in terms of contributions to their campaign war chest.
And lo and behold, they're supporters.
And they're supporters. And I have not been there long enough in the General Assembly, but I've been there long enough to take 3 no votes on gambling and gaming. And it seems that the same people run this legislation over and over and over again. And I think the message is Illinois doesn't want any more gaming or gambling. I think they're done with it.
Now, there were some places, some municipalities within your jurisdiction, the 112, that were looking at this, the various towns. Are you aware of who is and who is not going to have this on the ballot, or actually who is going to have this on the ballot in November?
Well, if my recollection serves correct, Collinsville will have it on the ballot. And I'm not sure, but maybe Glen Carbon likewise. Edwardsville has rejected it. Bethalto had, and of course that's not in my jurisdiction, but it's in the Metro East area. Bethalto said yes, now they're going to come back and apparently say no, which is the case in a number of communities throughout the state. And I don't, maybe the governor's action has in some way caused them to move in this direction, but the simple truth is, as we move forward here, this doesn't seem to be, at least to me, doesn't seem like a proposition we want to keep chasing.
Just define for people, when you say the governor's actions, what do you mean by that?
Well, the governor vetoed the gaming legislation, which was passed just before we adjourned in May. And basically the governor's concern was that there was not enough investigatory ability in the state to find out whether or not people interested in video gaming were the right people to be in the business. The Chicago Crime Commission, by the way, has linked gambling and gaming of all sorts to organized crime. I don't know whether that's true or not. That's the Chicago Crime Commission.
Let me see if I got this right. So at this moment, Illinois does or does not have a law which would permit, if Collinsville the citizens there vote yes, we would like video gaming. Is there a law that allows them to have video gaming?
No.
But they're being asked anyways
Well,
whether they want it or not.
I don't think the city understood that, the governor may veto this. Now, I think it becomes a moot issue when the governor now has set aside the legislation that was passed. That's not to say that something is not going to come back in a different form at a different time, maybe as early as veto session in November and December, which will attempt to correct that. So I'm not sure it's all bad that they're.
Well, you're saying it must have passed both houses.
It did.
If he vetoed it.
He did, yeah.
So
In fact, I think his veto was just within the last 4 or 5 days, maybe a week ago.
Well, yes, from now, which is September 11th today.
Right.
It's just so people know because they're seeing
Correct.
this later on.
Correct.
Who knows what what will have changed by the time they see this. Although, let me remind people that they can also see this on YouTube as well. You have some other. Let's now move on to some other issues that I mentioned in the opening. Workers' comp. That's been a particular interest of yours since you went to the legislature. Where does that? What was the issue that was of concern, and where does it stand now?
Well, we have 2 times now in the last 10 years told the general public and told the business community in the state of Illinois that we have reformed workers' compensation, and that simply is not true. The first attempt was in 2004, and that was a miserable failure. It had to do with changes in the fee schedule, and we we established something called UR, Utilization Review, which was supposed to establish what was a case that was really a justifiable workers' compensation case and one that was not. And there's a little more to it than that, but it was to, if you will, improve the system with respect to compensability and even ongoing medical. Those 2 things failed. So we came back again in 2010 with a very expansive omnibus workers' compensation bill. And what we have found today is that all of the elements of that bill, and probably too many to discuss today, are not paying off in terms of savings, are not paying off in terms of integrity to the system. But the biggest thing we found is that not dealing with the legal definition of what a compensable claim is in Illinois has been the showstopper. I filed legislation to correct that, to try and cure that, but I must tell you, until we do that in the state of Illinois, we're basically saying we're not open for business, because everyone is looking around and they see that the system is really, really no longer compensation, it's a benefit. It's perceived to be a benefit. And I will tell you.
How do you mean that? First of all, I want to just go back. You're not a lawyer, so I expect I'm going to get a straight answer out of you. Compensable claim. Okay. When you say that, what do you think that means?
Well, compensable claim is one under the Workers' Compensation Act.
Right.
Is deemed to be one that is found to be related to work.
So someone's at work and they slip and fall, break their leg, they can't do their job anymore, so they stay at home. They get paid by the state workers' compensation section while they're off the job.
That's correct.
Okay, and that's a compensable claim.
That's correct.
That's what you're saying. Okay, now what do you mean by because the definition isn't tight enough that certain businesses feel that that the costs are undefined?
Well, there's jurisdictions throughout the state have learned that, and I want to make this very clear, the workers' compensation system, when it's used correctly, is not a bad system. When it's an abused system and becomes a benefit, that is, people feel like workers' comp is an entitlement, then it's a bad system. What we have in Illinois is, and I'll just use an example that, in fact, I had a small business owner from Belleville, which is not in my district, come in to me the other day, and he gave me an example of someone who admittedly said, I had hurt myself on a Sunday. I came to work, I did the job, and I did the job for 7 hours, and then I had an extremity that started bothering me from what happened on Sunday. His lament was that the workers' compensation folks involved in the arbitration of the case said it was compensable because he was on the job. My point is,
When he made the announcement that he hurt, even though he'd gotten hurt the day before.
that's correct. And that's not uncommon in a lot of cases. So what we need to do is we need to say the principal cause and the principal location is on the job. You don't bring in your injuries and exacerbate them because, I mean, we would end up, and we are ending up in Illinois with more and more and more compensation costs, insurance increases, and people just can't afford to do business on that basis. So
Let me
we need to
ask you-
fix that definition.
Well, okay. I guess I'm thinking of two different things here. We're talking about getting them healthy again, which is health insurance, versus compensating them so that they don't have loss of wages. Am I reading that
That's
right? 'Cause
exactly right.
I was just thinking, well, like the Affordable Care Act, I'm just wondering how that's going to fit in, because everybody apparently is going to be covered under some generalized health insurance. So I'm not sure whether the states are going to need to be putting money in to get people healthy anymore, because and I don't even understand what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So I won't even go there anymore. But what you're saying is people want to go to work, make a declaration that they can't come to work and still get paid.
What people are doing that causes business real stress and concern is that people who have had something happen outside of the workplace bring it into the workplace.
Right.
And then through the process of working say, you, Mr. Employer, made this condition that was not related to doing my job a situation that causes me to say it is compensable under the Workers' Compensation Act. A lot of people argue that that's right. My argument is a lot of businesses that look at Illinois and look at other states, and those other states who have corrected their legal definition to make sure that the principal cause of the injury is the workplace and then is compensable. Illinois hasn't taken that step. And so, again, we're kind of an outlier when it comes to how the workers' compensation system is handled here as opposed to other states.
Okay. Let's move on to the income tax issue. In the introduction, I mentioned that there had been an increase in the state income tax, and that was of concern to you. Why is that of concern to you, and what would you like to do about it?
Well, here's what we did with the income, in my view, and I wasn't in the General Assembly when the increase in both corporate and individual income.
67% increase,
That's correct.
according to what I said.
Very, very significant increase. It now makes Illinois one of the highest taxed, whether it's business or individuals, taxed states in the nation.
Well, before you go any further, how is it that Illinois is still broke, even though they're taking in huge amounts more of income tax?
Well, I would say that you would call it waste, abuse, probably a great deal of mismanagement and a complete understanding of finance in a big operation like the state of Illinois. A total lack of understanding.
Okay. So now go forward with what you're saying about, you weren't there when this vote occurred, but...
I wasn't there, but I understand that the rationale was that we needed to make sure that we secured money so that we could continue to keep our bond rating at a level that was good for the state of Illinois, and at the same time, I think the thought, as I understand it, was that we needed to make sure we could continue to make our pension payments. So what we found today is that we no longer, that 67% increase, that $7 billion we've taken in is no longer enough to pay those bills. And now the real question is, what's going to happen when this sunsets?
Oh, it does sunset too.
2014. So the question becomes, and we have all kinds of people who have voted for this say, I will never vote to sustain that tax increase again. So the question becomes, well, what do you do? What do you do?
Some people outside of Illinois have this suspicion that the legislature of Illinois and some of the people of Illinois think that the federal government is going to come in and rescue them at the end of the day. Does that thought process go through some of your colleagues?
Well, it may go through some of my colleagues, but I think that's a terrible thought, and I think a misguided one. I don't think the United States of America, with a debt burden themselves of, it's approaching $17 trillion, is in a position to bail out Illinois, because immediately 5 other states would be in line for that same concession.
California, New York,
well, New York,
those
New
are
Jersey.
two.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think we can know, I can tell you, fiscally, from a monetary standpoint, we can't keep printing money to cover our debts at a national level, so I don't think it's going to happen on a statewide basis.
Mm-hmm. In about the 3 minutes that we have left here, I want to just give you the opportunity to talk about some things that we haven't covered, anything that we haven't that you wanted to say.
Well, this is, it's campaign season, and I've had the opportunity to shake hands at many, many doors. In fact, I've been to almost 10,000 doors since I came home the end of May. And what I have found is that people are extraordinarily upset with the state. They're angry, they're disappointed, they're anxious, and now a lot of them feel trapped because they can't sell their homes and leave the state, which many people tell me they would like to do. One of the biggest concerns, though, and I will just close on this note, one of the biggest concerns is their tax bill, their personal property tax bill. On top of everything else that we've asked them to pick up and pay for in this state, they have extraordinarily high property tax bills with no hope of seeing change, even though we've come through a huge recession where prices have decreased substantially, diminished on a huge scale. They still don't see relief on their tax bills. So I filed a bill which basically says freeze the property tax bills in Illinois for 5 years. And why did I do that? I did it because we are cutting out our middle class in this state. And I think when you lose your middle class, the rest follows, and it's not good. We need to protect those people who can't pay their bills and the people who are working, and I'm talking about the elderly in that case, but I'm also talking about the people in the middle class who have many, many other core essential things they need to pay for in their household and for education of their kids, so on and so forth. So this 5% freeze needs to happen. And it's going to require us tightening our belts and doing things differently in municipalities, counties, and in our state.
Can I ask what the superintendent of schools in your district think of freezing property taxes, because that's where they get most of their school money?
Well, I will say this. The 2 superintendents that I talk to the most realize that we as a state can't place additional burdens on our taxpayers, and they're very supportive of that thought. I think they would be I wouldn't say very supportive. I think in all candor it might cause them some concern. But I will tell you, if you put people in the place of not being able to pay their bills, then you have a separate and serious issue beyond what we're talking about today.
Then these 2 were probably Edwardsville and Collinsville?
Correct.
Yeah. Well, we've just about run clean out of time here. And it's been a good conversation, and it's been a while. I was surprised how long it's been since you were here.
Well, you need to get me in more often.
I think that we definitely need to do that.
That'd be great.
First, well, we'll see whether you get reelected or not.
We will. We will see.
So I want to thank you for coming and spending some time with us and sharing your thoughts.
It was my pleasure. Anytime.
And to the audience, I've been speaking with Dwight Kay. He is the state representative in Illinois in the District 112. He represents basically the Edwardsville, Glen Carbon, Collinsville area. For those of you who are regulars, we'll see you next time. Don't forget, we're on YouTube.